Well, I'm Mark Laurie, and this is the From the Heart series, the day 2 with Bonnie speaking. The insiders, the insider share is what we're called. And Bonnie comes to us as a psychologist with an enormous background and an incredible history. If you want to hear more about her, you can always pop over to our podcast called fascinatingwomen.ca, where we spent 45 minutes delving into her background and all those cool kind of things. So Bonnie's been helping people and being a psychologist. She's on top of all the flows and ebbs that is happening with the COVID-19 virus. And with that, we'll have you start chatting. What would you like to share with us?
Well, first of all, I just want to have a disclaimer. Normally, I really like to back everything up with facts and research. And of course, we don't have that yet. So what you're going to be hearing from me today is really observations and coming from my experience of people and how they work. And of course, we are dealing with different experiences based on people who are single or part of a family or part of a couple versus people who are working or people who are not being able to work. So there's a lot of variety here, but there are certain kind of patterns that I've noticed with people anyway. Mm-hmm. And, kind of how it looks with everybody's a little bit different, but there are certain, there's a progression I've noticed from the beginning of the people going into isolation mm-hmm. and the social distancing protocols.
Well, that's fun. Well, so when all this started, was there sort of, did people react to it quickly from your point of view? Because you had people come into, or has there been kind of a slow evolution of concern, anxiety, those kind of things?
You know what I noticed is right off the bat, people seemed to be okay for the first couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Most people were pretty okay. I think people had just sort of stocked up, mm-hmm. Prepared to be at home. And part of it is, I think, it's just that natural shock that we have when something happens all of a sudden that we're not ready for, we're not expecting, that is unlike anything we've ever been through before. Yeah. And of course, with the people who have children, all of a sudden their children were at home all day. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of us have these expectations of ourselves that we were supposed to then become super teacher, as well as super parent and super worker and super spouse and all of these things. But, at first it's really, we're busy kind of adjusting and figuring things out. There were a lot of people, I think, that were sleeping a lot also, yeah. because they're enforced time. We're used to being really, really busy, go. I was just talking to you about this, about how busy, my day normally is. And with the COVID-19, things slowed down dramatically. Mm-hmm. And so there was more time for people to do things like sleep, rest, get caught up on all those Netflix shows you've been wanting to watch. So for the first little bit, there was sort of this, I think, a little bit of a honeymoon period, also that little bit of a shock where people were not really quite sure what to think about it. Mm-hmm. All of my introverts were totally happy because they were no longer being pushed to go out and have to be social. The extroverts were not so happy about it, I noticed. It's a little bit harder for an extrovert right now, mm-hmm. particularly the ones who are, they're doing all the Zoom meetings and the phone calls and everything, but they're struggling because the in-person isn't there. And that's hard. So
people that are used to hugging, like all this air hug, is really bizarre. But there's people that are just dying for physical contact, and yeah. and the noise. I got one friend we're talking to that they hit bars an awful lot, and they're used to a clamor around them. Mm-hmm. It's gone silent, and it's affecting them in ways they're surprised at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think at first there was just that kind of I'm not used to it, and then it moved on to now people beginning to feel some anxiety. Right? Because, okay, well, I can handle this 2 weeks of reduced pay or no pay, or, there's not too many layoffs happening. But then all of a sudden we start going, okay, well, what's going to happen with the economy? What's going to happen with my livelihood? Am I going to be able to do this? What if I get sick? What if somebody I love gets sick? so I started to notice more fear. The media has been very, very active with, a lot of things that create a lot of fear for people. And some of it is based in fact and research, and some of it is not. If we look on social media as well, there's a lot of different opinions and ideas out there, and very little in the way of facts. So I started to see a lot more anxiety at that point in time. And what was interesting to me is that my anxious clients, and I have a lot of those, were not as anxious as people who were not normally anxious. So I interpreted that as being that my anxious clients already had coping skills in place. They know what to do when things get uncertain, because their lives are largely uncertain, and so they're very good at being aware of uncertainty, and so they had some of those skills for it. But people who were not normally anxious, who are used to having a more stable life environment, started to be very, very anxious. And not really know what to do with it. But then we start to see then the anxious people started to get more anxious again, because our coping skills, the things that I normally give my clients for coping skills, are things like get out, go somewhere, connect with people, do something outside, get out of your house. And now, no, I can't tell people to do that. You can't go to the gym and go to that painting class that normally is very soothing and helpful for you. You're not allowed to do. And you can't go out to coffee with a friend, right? So all these things that we normally have in place as coping skills just suddenly disappeared. So there's a certain amount of time that people could actually use their internal, like cognitive coping skills like, well, let's balance out the negative with the positive. Let's get, what I can do and that sort of thing. But the longer it goes on, the longer that's hard for people. So I kind of think about it as we started this, right? We started off fairly handling it, but then we started to kind of dive a little bit. And then now we're hearing about there's people getting really depressed. My single clients.
This must be very hard.
Really, really hard, because they're now very isolated. They don't have anybody to connect to. So I'm seeing depression, a lot of depression hit there. I have this kind of, one of the things I've observed about depression over the years is that I've kind of got this idea that connection is the antidote to depression. Connecting with self, connecting with nature, connecting with whatever your bigger picture is, whether it's just community and the universe, or if it's God or something like that, and connecting with friends and other humans. And so people being alone in their homes with no one around, starting to really see a lot of that. And of course, there's some increases in suicidality partially because we've got the uncertainty of what's going to happen. The why bother if I don't have that connection with other people? I'm not allowed to have that. Older people who, have gotten a little bit closer to the ends of their lives, where it's like, well, if I can't be with the people I love, there's not really any reason for me to do this, right?
Right.
So hearing older people saying, I don't care, come over and visit me because I don't want to have a life that doesn't have that.
Wow.
So, yeah, so there's a little more of that coming in, and but here's the thing. I don't like getting stuck in the dark. We need to get in the dark. We need to dive into it's important to get there and see what it is. And that's the beauty of this whole process. This is actually really, I know it's hard, and when I say this, there's going to be people being like, she is a crazy lady. What is she saying? This is not beautiful. This is not awesome. This sucks, and I hate it. And of course, I'm a little twisted because I like the dark, but but that's what I do. But when we dive into the dark and we do it on purpose, you're coming in with a flashlight. You can kind of like you're shedding light there. And when you do that, you can begin to see what are the things that really get to you. People saying, what's my purpose? What's the purpose? Why bother? That is a really good question to ask. It is a very good question. Why should you bother? What is your purpose?
Okay.
And so with everything slowing down, we don't have our normal distractions, because let's face it, most of those coping skills I give people are distractions.
Yeah.
They're not actually getting to the bottom of things. And for some people, that's fine, that they don't need that. They don't want to do that. And in normal life, they don't need to. They can function just fine. But this gives us an opportunity when it slows down to really get into that. And with anxiety, oftentimes it is about uncertainty. And there is often some kind of underlying, like, what am I doing with my life sort of thing. Because when people are really solid and they know what they're doing with their lives or what their purpose is, they're not as likely to get anxious, because they've always got that goal. They've always got something that they're going for. There's a reason.
This is just an adjustment for it, but it's a bump in the road, but it's just, they're still in the road.
That's right. And and anytime there's a choice point, they know which one to go to, because they've got this inner direction towards, this is what I do. This is what's important to me. So right now is an opportunity for people, with all this slowing down, with getting into that dark place, whatever it looks like for you, getting into that dark place gives you an opportunity to build something that is so much more solid. All the old stuff is kind of breaking down, and the usual way of doing things is breaking down. And that is always an opportunity. And I know it's really hard to see it as an opportunity, because it sucks when you're going through it. It is not fun at all. I get it.
Right.
Trust me, because I do this to myself all the time, and like, but because, and it's not a fun process even when you've done it a lot and you know what you're doing, but it is so necessary. And the gifts when you come out of it are worth it. Just take my word for it for now. If you're not feeling it, for people who aren't feeling it, just take my word for it. You got to dive in, you got to do it, but you got to soothe yourself and be gentle with it while you're doing it. So, one of the things that I saw recently was my daughter sent me a little video of a guy dancing, like a really fit guy dancing to a song.
Okay.
And then the little thing that said, and after COVID, and then a guy who really wasn't fit at all dancing. Kind of like, just because there's a lot of, and I think a lot of us stocked up on things that are not healthy kinds of foods, and we're not able to be as active as we normally would. We're not as distracted by the things we're doing. So there may be some weight gain happening. That's one I'm hearing about as well. Weight gain and a lot more alcohol consumption, things like that. But the thing is that you want to be gentle with yourself right now. There will be time to get back in shape afterwards. There will be time when you are more motivated. When you have that low energy happen, when people are dropping in motivation, that is an opportunity to rest. That's your body and your mind saying, you know what, it's okay, rest. Just be gentle with yourself. And chances are really good you're not actually going to be stuck there for the rest of your life. This is the other fear that people have when we get into these places, is that I'm going to be stuck here. I'm never going to get out of this. And it's not true.
Yeah, it's going to pass. It's sort of the natural flow of it, but no one's been through this before, so we have not a whole bunch to fall back on. There's some old people going, back in '87. There was this date. But even I remember talking to one kid, and he was explaining, he says, well, when I grew up, the only thing we prepared for was atomic bombs, and so we were really good at diving under desks. So this kind of thing is brand new. So how's this different from, say, couples? Because we're talking to couples who are discovering some really good things sometimes, some surprise, like, really, if you do that one more time, you're gonna die. Divorce will not be needed.
Yeah, so when it comes to couples and families, actually one of the things that unfortunately is happening is if you have a dysfunctional system, there's definitely concern about abuse right now, abuses that are happening in dysfunctional families and couples, an increase in that because of the added pressure of being with people. Even in healthy families, you hear people say, man, I need to get away. I need a way away from my loved ones. You can kind of forget why you love them sometimes. And But it's the same, it's actually the same thing. You say that we've never been through this before, and we haven't been through this specific, but humans go through this all the time. We have all been through times when we've actually had to struggle a bit and we've had external circumstances. It's not usually as obvious.
Yeah.
And it's not usually happening to everybody at the same time. And this is the same with couples, right? So everything's more extreme when you're kind of shoved together under the same roof. And some people have homes, like if I had some people say, luckily we each can kind of go off into our own spaces. And that helps us, as a family or as a couple to kind of go into our own spaces and have that. But not everybody does.
No, that's, I think, where a lot of the celebrities are losing relevance. The guy goes, oh, we're stuck in our home here. We're like you guys, we're locked down. The guy goes, no, you're locked down like in a 20,000 square foot, 4-level bathroom with toys and swimming pool compound. And I'm in a 500 square foot apartment, and it's not the same.
It's not. It is not the same, because part of how we actually are successful and function well in couples and in families is by going to school and work and having these other things that are focused on our own lives, that we can focus on ourselves, that we can kind of really fulfill our own personal needs without the other person's opinions or needs coming in, right? So what happens when you have this, 500 square feet with 4 people living in it, the kind of thing, is that the dynamics that are always there they're bigger.
Right.
They're just emphasized, and you're seeing it more. You're seeing more intensity in things, and of course, it may be harder to get away from it because, oftentimes, like with couples, when I'm working with couples, oftentimes we have with conflict. Often, not always. Every couple is different, but oftentimes one person's like, okay, we need to talk about this, and things start to get intense. The other couple's like, I need to get away, and we'll avoid, right? And so, in a healthy couple, what that means is that person gets away. Both people kind of have a chance to think about, kind of figure out what they want, what they're doing, come back, and then solve that together. In couples where they haven't figured that out yet, and sometimes that's, they just haven't figured it out yet, and sometimes that they need guidance in how to do that. But then there's conflict, but that kind of conflict can be very, very good for your relationship too. And that's the thing. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is that yes, it's hard, and right now it feels like it's this bad thing. It's terrible, like we're fighting all the time and everything. But productive conflict brings people together. So it's just about learning how do we have this conflict? If you and your wife are kind of stepping on each other's toes, right? You're now both in the same house, and neither of you is really leaving to go do other things. Then you have to figure out a way to work with each other, to find that personal space within the relationship. And and then when you bring it together, each of you is dealing with kind of your own thing. Then what we do is, there's a really wonderful writer called, his name is David Schnarch. He's written a book called The Passionate Marriage. And one of the things he talks about, I absolutely love, he talks about how, couples are often dependent on each other, and kind of, they get enmeshed, right? So if one person kind of does something, the other gets kind of dragged along in that. And that can cause a lot of difficulties in the marriage, with people kind of shutting down with each other. And it's hard to be truly intimate in a healthy way when you do that. But then we have other couples who feel, and I get this all the time, people coming in, we're roommates, and there's no intimacy. We get things done, and the kids are taken care of and everything, and everything's running well. But I'm feeling kind of lonely in my marriage, right? And that's the independent part, where they're kind of living separate lives. What we want is interdependence, where you are capable of standing on your own feet. So you deal with your own stuff. And right now is an opportunity to do this. You deal with your own stuff, and maybe your partner can help you with this. Their partners are really good at knowing which buttons to push. This is what you need to grow at. David Schnarch calls this marriage and long-term partnership a people growing machine for that purpose, because your partner knows how to kind of get in there at things. So, but you do your own stuff. Maybe your partner kind of pushes those buttons, and you kind of step away to process and figure out what it is that's happening. then you come back. Now, both people are able to do this, but like on their own, right? Because both people are doing the work. Then you come back together and you can support each other, but you're kind of doing your own thing. You're capable of standing on your own,
right?
But you can then be supportive of each other. So then you're with your partner because you choose to be,
right,
not because you are dependent and feel like you have to be. So that's a whole other process, and that could take days, and I could go into that more. But my point is that this is an opportunity when people are in the same house together, and the same thing with families. Families have their own dynamics. Oftentimes there's one person who people kind of see as being the problem in the family. There's certain dynamics that happen. And this is an opportunity to kind of work through that, because you can't just avoid and not deal with it. You have, right?
Yeah. That's we had because some couples are faced with an abusive situation, they're stuck in there. And we came across a piece, and the girl phoned up. She was worried about a friend, and so she phoned up and she said, I'm your makeup salesperson, and so we're going to have a conversation about makeup. If you ask for blush, that means everything's okay, and if you're asking for eyeliner, then I'll call someone to save you. and I'll be calling back to check on your order, and so on. And that's the way she was able to help her friend out.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really clever. It was an in-code thing. So that's the couples. So how do any particular coping things for families? Because you've got the two kids. There's the stories we came across where people are working on their computers at meetings of 70 people, and then a naked spouse walks.
Yeah.
It was cute. The one that happened was it was both cases actually. One was a guy, one was a girl, two different people, and they were totally unaware. It was just a casual walk, very slow. And there was like 70 people, and the guy was so intent. The person in both cases was so intent with their part of the presentation, they weren't aware of everyone was really looking behind them. Both people said, fortunately, they were good looking, so we're okay. It wasn't gonna scare people off. I think another girl, she turned around and discovered her 4-year-old daughter hit the right buttons, and she was having a conversation with the CEO of the company. So there's coworkers that are causing problems.
There's no, and then one of the things that's happening too, because I'm doing a lot of online sessions as well for therapy, and animals as well, right? Like there've been a couple. I can't see my client because the cat has decided to walk across the keyboard, right? Or yes.
Cat, I was doing a live webinar. My cat did that, and all of a sudden things flashed, and I was pumped.
Where did it go? Yeah. And of course with kids as well, right? Where, I'm doing a session with someone, we're getting into something heavy, and then the kids walk in, right? So, I mean, and what I think is interesting is that we often hide things from our kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things they don't know. They don't know what our work life is like. Yes, there's this bring your kid to work thing, but does anybody ever do that? I don't see that very often. Every now and then I hear about it on the radio where somebody did bring their kid to work that day. And
those are normally the hands-on thing. Like, I'm a mechanic, come into work and see what I do. I'm a paper pusher, come and watch me push paper on. Like it's most of the work, because most of the work these days is not hands-on. So it's I watch and see. That's what you do at home, Dad.
Yeah. And so, kids don't often actually know what this is, and they don't ever have to learn. They're not learning that kind of separation of who my parent is when they're not with me, and so I see it as an opportunity to be a little bit more transparent with our kids, and kind of like, this is why. Like, a lot of times we have a tendency to say, this is the rule. Like, oh, mom's got to go. I got to get to work, right? And that's all they know. Is that, oh, I have to go to work. But they don't actually understand why. Like, why is mom putting her work ahead of my need for attention right now?
Yeah.
why is it that important? Why is it the work is so important? And so when you're in the same space together and you're having to find this way, first of all, kids get to see what's really going on and why it's important. They see it more firsthand. It means more.
Yeah.
But second of all, adults actually, you know, we're always talking about homework balance,
right,
and trying to prioritize and what's important. I get so many people who say family is most important value to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then their actions are they're working 60 hours a week and they very rarely see their family. You know, and this is not uncommon, I think, especially here in Calgary where we live.
Yeah.
It's very work-oriented, very, very good work ethic here. But the problem is that families sometimes don't really get to see that and understand it. So, and people kind of lose track of that, like the why. Why are we doing it? It goes back to what I was saying with individuals where, you know, why bother?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing this? Why am I working 60 hours a week at this job that I may or may not have some fulfillment at? You know, so when the kid comes in, it's sort of like this opportunity to get that balance right then. What's more important to me?
We've had friends that who have always worked at home, and they have a couple of them gone to hats, and so they have their office hat. I think it's usually like a red. You can't miss it. It's a red kind of stuff with it. And whenever they see dad with the hat on, he's at work. Whether he's in the kitchen or doesn't matter where he is, the hat's on, he's at work. He's really not here. When the hat comes off, then dad also talks about work, and it's all about the kids. And it creates a very clean thing. Other one just had a room. Whenever he walked in this room, he was at work. When he came out of it, then he wasn't. And the kids could get that from an early stage.
I love that because that's the boundary. Now, this is one of the other things that I'm running into as well with people is that normally we have to actually drive into work or get to work somehow. For those of us who work in an office environment or outside of the house, we normally have to get there somehow. So that transition period gives us time to adjust from home life to work life, and then from work life to home life to make that adjustment. Well, when you're at home, particularly for those of us who are not used to working from home, we need that. We need something like that, like something specifically that is that boundary to help us shift from one mindset to the next.
It works well. They because they've talked about that, and he goes because he's never very this one guy we're thinking of in particular. He's never. It was a very, very short span of life where he went to an office. Then he started his own company, and from then on in, even before he had kids, he was working at home. And he found even with his wife. That's when he started the hat thing, and it started off not for kids, but from his wife, so that they could be clear. But the thing that he also come on, which relates to what you're talking about, is that he put the hat on, his brain shifted. I'm in work now. Yeah. And then when he took the hat off, his brain goes, we're done. We're out of here. This is it. He puts it down, and he would not talk work with us unless she asked specific questions, but pretty much it was, this is our couple time. This is our family time. And when the kids came along, it was such an ingrained habit, but he would take it off. If he was going to have a break in the day, he'd sometimes negotiate a break, and he'd take the cap off for 15 minutes or 2 minutes to be with the kids for he'd just call his coffee break, whatever, and to go back on, he's back at work. And it added such clarity to his life, he said. He just, he couldn't imagine. I think I don't know if he figured out himself, if he stumbled on the idea, sometimes we do, and go, that's a brilliant thing I should share.
Oh, it's a great idea. I love that. And that is actually, that's good for the people who are working at home right now too. Yeah. The other concern that I'm running into is people who don't have a job anymore, who aren't working, concerns about people who were laid off for this because, like restaurant workers and people who can't work and are wondering if they're going to be able to go back to work. Or cases like where, with the airlines, people working for the airlines where there's been massive layoffs.
Yeah. And the airlines are saying we're gonna come back, and it's gonna take us years to get back to where we were, if ever. And the volume is gonna be shutting down. Like, and poor WestJet. I mean, they just had a big $5 billion launch of an airliner that came online. That extra people got hired. It's a horrible shock. Like especially if you're an entrepreneur, then this is just one step that you do. We've got people buying businesses all the time. But if you're a company man, so to speak, and suddenly this is your skill set.
And like the airlines, and then so there's a lot of there's a lot of things that are happening for people that are like adding extra stress, potential stress, and like, what am I going to do? It's not like I can find another job right now, you know? So that's those additional stressors, and those are traditionally the kinds of stressors that actually do impact and add to the likelihood of abuse happening in households.
Yeah, frustration climbs up.
Yeah. So that's where when if you have someone in your household who has a tendency to be a bit more, have difficulty with anger management, for example, if we're talking about verbal or physical abuse happening or both, that person needs to be a little extra vigilant in taking care of themselves and doing things. You can still go out and go for a walk or go for a run. I do encourage people to do a lot of physical activity with that, like if it's anger that's built up, or frustration, that sort of thing, to really take it out physically with things like running, walking. If you have a space for working out in your home, doing a workout of some sort, like even, I mean, you don't need a space to do push-ups, really. It takes very few. What do you need? Like, if, you know, for you would need what, like 6.5 feet?
Yeah.
By a couple, whatever, to do some push-ups, right?
So many, like I'm with BNI and Kenny, so he's doing free workouts online right now. So there's all these trainers are going like, I got this time, I got a video thing. Come on in. If you like my style when this is over, you see me at the gym. But they're going, so you can actually connect with a lot of places that will take you through it. Have you some that, I guess it's the Peloton kind of approach to working out? That's the bike.
Oh yes, those bike things.
Yeah,
yes.
The screens. It's basically an advanced stay still bicycle with a big TV screen attached to it.
Well, and a whole lot of different exercise options, actually. Lots of different classes and things, which is great for people who have those, who have the money to have those. But for people who don't, you know,
these local guys, almost every city has got fitness, yoga people who are like several of the groups I'm with, because I'm with entrepreneur groups, and they're like, well, how do we pivot? How do we do stuff? And there's a whole bunch of online businesses that are starting up as well, from Marlon Sanders, who's been in it for a long time, and they're making some really good processes for kids to get in. I shouldn't say kids, it's all ages are kind of happening. When you hit 65, everybody's a kid, I discovered. At a certain age, it's like, well, I'll use that line. We're seeing a lot of people. I mean, the one bonus now, and I hope it turns out well in the long run, is people getting pets. Like there's shelters.
Yeah, I heard that.
And
yeah, actually, dogs and cats. So here's a little bit of something we do have some research on. It's not just my observation.
okay.
Something I can go to research with. I'd love being able to do that. One thing we do actually know about furry creatures, furry friendly creatures, cats, dogs, rabbits, whatever it is that you have that you can kind of snuggle with, is that they do actually tend to drop heart rate, they drop blood pressure, they increase oxytocin. Oxytocin is your internal love drug. It's what's released in mothers when they are nursing their babies. And holding babies. So this is why you get so many women who really like to hold babies, because they get a nice rush of oxytocin. It feels good. But it's not just a female thing. Men actually also get that too. So, but yeah, so having a dog or a cat and snuggling with them, you know, get as much of that as you possibly can. Again, for people who tend to have difficulty with anger management difficulties, they definitely get that person a dog and make sure it's a dog they love, that they want, not one that is frustrating to them, right? It needs to be a good fit. But like dogs in particular are good for people who really need that extra support through this. And
we're discovering as well, again, these groups, everyone, I'm connected with a group called Pivot to Profit. And so everyone's trying to, there's a fellow there that was a masseuse, and now we shifted into dog lessons. And because everyone's getting new dogs, he has got all these people, it's very cheap or free, that they're like, okay, I got a dog. It's really untrained badly.
Yes, I know, right?
And so now, they've got all this beautiful time to train their dog. There should be, by all accounts, some really well-trained pets out there.
If people know what they're doing. But training animals is more about training the person than the animal anyway.
It's all, that's what he does. But you're involved. Like you're training a dog, you're training yourself to be with the dog, and you're generally speaking outside, but you're engaged in something. Like when you're, when you're doing it, and there's, of course, and the webinar thing is getting thin. There's we had one of the speakers was supposed to come on. The guy says, I can't. I just webinared out. I'm done.
Puzzles. People are sick of puzzles, and they apparently.
I got a puzzle out. It's I think it's like 25,000 piece plexiglass puzzle. Okay,
Whoa.
so it's 25,000 pieces or some huge number. It fills your hallway, and there's no picture. It's just see-through plastic.
Oh my gosh.
So,
if you're the person who can do that and doesn't get frustrated and give up, kudos to you. And that is one great way to keep your mind focused and mindful.
I see a video of a cat that had this large puzzle. It was again one of these really big cover your kitchen table puzzles, and they left a camera out, but for some bizarre thing anyways, they noticed on film the cat was stealing 1 or 2 pieces per day.
Oh no.
I don't. One of the things we're looking forward to in about 9 months is, as a photographer, is a lot of expectant moms.
Yes, right. I'm kind of thinking about that. Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that, and I think if it's coming from a positive place of intimacy and closeness and bringing it in, fabulous. That's wonderful. I do hope that that's really kind of where it's coming from for people. But yeah. I like what we want to do is things that increase the intimacy and closeness. And one of the things that luckily actually that does increase intimacy and closeness in relationships, both in partner relationships and in family relationships with kids, is laughter. So get those comics that everybody likes, or those funny movies that everybody likes, get them on board. As much belly laughs as you can get, like the family games that make everybody laugh. Whatever it is that as a family you can do that makes you laugh, or as a couple that makes you laugh together, that is a nice, easy, fun way to actually increase intimacy and closeness.
We just had, because of course this is an ongoing series, but going back about a week or so ago, we had Maud Bombadarian from Edmonton, and her company's called The Laughing Hour. And
yes,
so
right. Yeah.
I spent a whole hour learning, and you can fake the laugh, you can control your laugh. And you can trigger all the things, even if it's not real, and eventually the body triggers it's for real. Yeah. And so it's called thelaughinghour.com if you want to get insights from that. That's what she does. She's not a comic. She doesn't.
But that's the thing. Laughing is really good for you. I'm always a little bit like, okay, caution about if you force it, because your body knows when you're forcing a smile or forcing laughter. But what I do is, what I tell people is that if it makes you just a little bit, like gives you a little bit of a grin, like it actually is a real humor response that you're having. It's just not like a belly laugh, and you turn it into a chuckle. That will, because it's real. It's coming from something real. So you just want to push it a little bit, make it a little bigger, right? And actual like faking a belly laugh, like I don't know, can you do that? Have you done
what happens, what she does is she goes, is it you'll start faking it, and then suddenly go, this is absurd, and your body goes, this is really absurd, and you kind of get into it. But even things that the actors do where they you think back on something that's humorous, like this it could have happened a week ago, and you go, oh, that is so neat. Or turn on to a TV show, it's got lots of bad comedy into it, and you're kind of there.
But see, and that's actually one of the things I like to talk about with clients is actually manipulating yourself. You can manipulate your own emotions. And so what I did is I just started laughing. Now that happens to be something I'm capable of doing, and I know how to do it. And it's real. It turns into a real laugh. So I think that's kind of what she's talking about with that. Like when you really do that belly laugh, and for most of people, like do it in private. If you're going to feel like you're a joker or something doing it, it feels awkward, that's fine. Do it in private first, or do it with someone who gets it and will just think this is fun and do it with you. Like kids, actually do it with the kids, get the kids laughing. Like kids love that stuff. But manipulating yourself with emotional things. So what kinds of things make you feel these emotions? And then just load up on them, right? Like, is it the YouTube videos with the cats? Because a lot of people like those. And of course, that's a little bit, it's cheesy now, but it actually works, right? Or whatever it is that works, build up this nice long list of things that make you laugh, or things that make you happy, or things that feel good to you. I have a list that I give my clients. It's like 275 items on this list of things that people do just because it feels good to do. And I give them the homework to choose something from that list every day and do something for themselves every day that just feels good that they want to do. It's everything from like taking a bath to sending a love letter to themselves, to buying a new pair of shoes, to going camping for a weekend, which not quite, but June 1st, I hear.
We've got, because I have so many clients that have come with photographed over 5,000 women, and one of our clients, a lot of them are single, and she had landed, actually I think she saw this like a comic book happening, and she decided with her friend, and what they would do is on a random day during the week, they would send each other a flower with a nice note.
Nice.
Just as friends. And it would be delivered, and it was kind of like their budget. They decided that this was worth like a movie month or something. And they would find a nice flower and put a nice note to it. And apparently when you send, and that's something people could be doing, I'm guessing a little better, but when the act of writing a gratitude note out to somebody, like from your newspaper delivery guy to whatever, just writing a note and then sending it, it triggers something inside, like you're focused on something outside of you. Is that?
Yeah, there's actually a coach that I know, a personal coach, and one of the things that he tells his clients, I hope he doesn't mind, Rich, hope you're but one of the things that he does is he tells his clients, first thing in the morning, what do we do when we're laying in bed, when we just open our eyes? First thing we think about, what do you have to do for today? Because for me, that's often the case. Like I think about, oh, I got to do this, got to do that. Yeah, that starts my day off on it can be kind of a stressful note. Not always, but sometimes it's a stressful note. What he does is he actually has people think of 3 things you're grateful for first thing in the morning. And so, of course, guess what it often is for me? Oh, this nice, comfortable bed. Right? But I'm grateful for that. And then, oh, I'm grateful for my children. Oh my gosh, my children, they're so awesome, right? And then poof, there goes my day.
Awesome kids. I'll grant you that. They're cool.
But it starts my day off on a really wonderful, positive note. And then from there, it just kind of helps everything kind of ripple along and be a little easier to deal with. Gratitude is a really powerful tool. And it doesn't have to be something super. It doesn't have to be huge, It can be something little like this bed is really comfortable.
We got a routine. One of the courses I've taken, he's got a thing called the Abundance Tracker, and it starts off, note the time you get up. There's a few affirmations that you kind of go through, and some you've designed myself. And then there's this 5 minutes of gratitude that you sit through. And part of it is like when I do it, I'm grateful for my studio. I'm grateful for the kind of gear I get to work with. I'm grateful for my own creativity. I'm grateful for my wife, Jan. And whenever I go through that 5 minutes, half of it is set. Man, I'm always grateful for Jan. She's just this amazing person.
Yeah, exactly.
Plan. Yeah. There's a couple close friends, and they always hit because they're always doing something on a daily basis that I'm grateful for. And then the balance of it, that for the next 2.5 minutes, there's people who are transitory grateful for, I guess, like something that the newspaper boy did, or I'm really grateful the mailman dropped something, stuff that just kind of is coming along that you sometimes have to dig a bit for. And it's kind of bizarre, but it still feels good when you're grateful that the co-op carries the level of food that I like. So you start to, when you have to every day, your brain goes, we're getting bored with just people. Like what else? And you start to.
I was actually thinking, I was just noticing it's all people for you. I'm actually going to make a note to to people watching this.
Okay.
You notice that Mark he's always happy. He's always cheerful. He's always got a smile on his face. Guess what? Connection to other people. Like you have a lot of connection with other people, and it is really important to helping us be happy in life when we feel a connection with other people. And part of it is finding those things to be connected with. This is actually something I tell my couples all the time. Instead of being all the irritating things that your partner does all the time that gonna get you, and you start to have some resentment and maybe some various other emotions that we don't necessarily want associated with a partner, shift it. change it. Every time you have like one of those thoughts where, oh my gosh, she left the dishes in the sink again, right? Oh, there's one of those. Okay, so now 3 things I really appreciate about my partner.
Yep.
And what you'll find is that you start to fall in love with them again.
Oh, you do. There is a fellow who was actually the husband who was relating the story to him, and they're at the point they're going to break up. The relationship just wasn't working. They're kind of nagging each other with it. And the psychologist or the person he was with said, well, on your side, what have you done to make her feel good? And I said, well, why would I? He says, well, before you throw the switch on the divorce thing, 1 month, I want you to go in, and whenever you come home from work, find something, however small it is, no matter how hard you have to dig too deep for it, say it. That you fluffed the cushions today, that was nice. The house has been aired out, what it was, because she was, because of his attitude, she was doing us from the house. And at first she was expecting that compliment and then a dig, which he was promised he would not do, and he didn't do it. And so the first week went by and there wasn't much of a change. By second and third week, she was responding, and he was also picking up the slack. And then, as you said, by the end of the month, he had rediscovered all the things he liked about her. She had risen to the occasion. To his surprise, he's also starting to notice it's a 50-50. He was doing stuff that was sloppy too. And he was fixing those because so anyways, it's that when you're aware of stuff, and I always work from the opinion when somebody says, does that bother you? And I go, well, I'm pretty sure that there's a whole bunch of stuff that I do on a daily basis that really annoys those people. And as a thank you for not pointing those things out, I'm not going to point what bothers me out with them either.
I mean, I think that, in a partnership, you do need to talk about some things, especially if it's something that kind of continues on. It's a pattern or it's part of something bigger. But, but honestly, I think we all actually have that one down pat. We're pretty good at pointing those things out. What we need is to balance it out. So this isn't about like becoming all Pollyanna and, forgetting all the problems and not dealing with them. It's not that. It's just balancing it out with something that's a little more positive and happy. And, when people feel loved, they step up to that. When they feel like they're respected, they step up to that.
They do.
And when they feel like they're not cared for or not loved, they step down to that. Right. So it's like this, what I was talking about with David Schnarch's thing, like when one person moves, the other person kind of responds. Now, what we'd really like to see is that people are kind of like able to stand on their own feet and feel confident and choose how they want to respond to their partner. But the reality is that with behavioral principles and everything, that we do tend to react a bit more and be more reactive. Actually, that reminds me of something you said with the training of the dogs. Yeah. There's a really good book for the readers out there, people who like their books. There's a really good book written by Karen Pryor. It's called Don't Shoot the Dog. And it's about behavioralist principles. And she's a really famous trainer of animals, but actually it's focused on humans. It's for how to do these things. And here's the beauty of behavioralism, of this sort of thing, is that you can either tell the other person that you're doing it or not tell them. It doesn't matter either way. So this is also for those parents out there who are having trouble with their kids right now. The same things we're talking about with partnerships and spouses also apply with your kids. Yes. When you start to appreciate, I do something with my kids, I call it the did something great jar, because I was starting to really notice all the things that were annoying me that they still needed to learn and hadn't figured out yet. Right. And it was just making me really naggy and negative, and I didn't really want to be that parent. So I found something on Pinterest, and they called it something else, but a little jar that the kids decorate. Right. And then what I do is I buy those little tickets, and every time they do something that I'm really proud of, that I really like, that I want them to do more of, I give them a did something great little ticket. Like, oh my gosh, sweetheart, you cleaned up all the dishes after dinner. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you. Right? So they get the immediate gratification of being appreciated and noticed. Then they get this little reminder. So whenever they need to go back in there and feel like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not a total loser, they have something to look at. And once they reach a certain number, for me, each time the kids get 100 of them, they actually, my kids are older, so you can do like that. They get an entire day off with no responsibility. So usually a day off school, although right now that's irrelevant, but a day off, and they get to do whatever they want during that day. And so usually we end up spending the day together. I take the day off work, and we spend the whole day together, and we just do whatever they want. I've had to put a cap on spending because they like to shop now. So I have to, so I don't go bankrupt. But, but I'll say you have this amount of money that you can spend today if you want for shopping or going to the pool and going swimming or staying home and playing games. One of my kids really just loves to play games. So, anyway, just a little aside. But
I love that. Actually, there was an episode on The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon was controlling the guy's girlfriend or wife with chocolates because she loved chocolate.
Yes, Penny, I remember that.
Yeah. And it was with chocolate. You can't do that. It wouldn't work. Yes, it did.
It does work.
Those things are just so powerful, and they're so neat to get. This acknowledgement thing, because we tend to forget. Like a lot of times, we just think it through. I've been. It's fun. I'll be watching a show, and the character comes up and says, "Yeah, so have you told so and so that you like them or appreciate them and so on?" And it's funny because that will trigger a thought with me. I go, "Have I been telling Jan that lately? My staff?" I have been, but it's just like, we tend to do that in our head, and we don't acknowledge it, or like, so sometimes there's things where the people say, "Yeah, your dad's so proud of you." Really? Because he's never mentioned it.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I thought about without saying. No, it needs to be said.
It doesn't go without saying. It does need to be said.
Yeah.
You know what I like about that though is that you have this you have in your head set up this trigger mechanism where you'll be triggered to remember to let her know, and I think I
do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I like about the Did Something Great jar, because it's sitting there and it's in a place where I can visibly see it easily. Mm-hmm. And I go, oh, I haven't actually done that in a while. Yeah. It's time to pay attention to the next great thing that my kid does so I can appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the triggering mechanisms you can set up for yourself, this is what I love about the brain. We can manipulate our own brains and do it like where we say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Next time I actually have a criticism of my kid and I don't like what they're doing, say that they're, refusing to go to bed, right? Oh my gosh, not again. Go to bed, right? When I find myself going, oh, go to bed, it's like, that is my next trigger mechanism to trigger. And I really love this about you, right? Like to really trigger that again for myself. And I love this, and I love this. 3 things, right? 3 things that I love after I've had one criticism in my head about somebody. So, but just kind of like making that your own trigger here for yourself so that next time it happens, it'll just be kind of associated.
And I think in these days of lockdown where people are really stuck together with their family and so on, these kind of triggers, reminders are really more important than they were even before that, because when you do the trigger, 2 things happen to where I'm hearing you talk. Is one is I'm reminded myself verbally, I like this about you. I like what you just did. This makes me feel really good. I should make note of that because, there's downside. But the other person kind of glows as well. Like, oh, you are noticing what I do. You are noticing when I do things right, which is the ban of all teenagers. You never listen to me. You never see stuff. And as soon as they start to recognize, no, wait a minute, they are watching. It works out 2 ways. They are watching. Are watching. Yeah, right. They're going to notice bad stuff too. So.
They're going to notice if I sneak out and go see my friends and go against the guidelines of COVID. Yeah, that's actually what I've been hearing about, is teenagers sneaking out and doing things together when they're not supposed to. But the other thing I'd like to actually say about that too is it's easy to recognize actions and behaviors that we appreciate. Oh, thank you for folding the laundry and putting that away. That was so nice. That's good. Mm-hmm. But better is, wow, you are being so responsible. I really appreciate how responsible you're becoming as a human being, right? We want to, like, a lot of times we have a tendency to, I don't know how many adults have experienced this, but I think it's a lot. Growing up feeling shame for who we are because of something we did. Like when the action becomes rather than, I asked you to rake the leaves and you didn't. Mm-hmm. I'm very disappointed. It becomes, you're such a lazy bum. You'll never amount to anything. It becomes about who you are. So we want to use that same trick in the other direction of building someone up and saying, it's really wonderful that you did that. I just love how responsible you're becoming as a young adult, or as you grow, or, you actually saw that your sibling was sad and you went and you put your arm around him or her, wow, you're just such a caring person. I just love that about you, right?
I think those are probably, because again, people tend to fall in the stuff that's obvious, like I love the way you did the walk and this kind of stuff. But part of what you sit back and admire about someone is you sit back and go, you know, I love the woman you're becoming. Like I've watched you evolve, and you take responsibility while you're conscientious about this, your choices are good. Acknowledging, I guess, their evolution. As they go through, like, you know, even, and it doesn't matter what the age is, because we're always learning, we're always doing something, we're always changing our habits.
That's right.
And as soon as someone notices that I'm finding that now, I'm finding as I get involved in this kind of process with the webinars and my Fascinating Women, these neat conversations, which is just, I could do this instead of my photography. I'm enjoying it so much. But there's people where they're going, oh, you know, I like what you're doing here, like you're, and it's like, oh, I tend to do more of this because that's kind of nice.
Right? Yeah, like it brings out more of it. Like we're more likely to do it again. And that's exactly what Don't Shoot the Dog is teaching, is you want someone to do more of something, then encourage them to do something more, reward it.
Thank you for your time today. It's always enjoyable. I'm Mark Laurie with Inner Spirit Photography. This has been From the Heart, Insider Share. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be done.
Hi.